I am sitting in my corner office on the 32nd floor, watching the city stretch out beneath me like a map of dreams I once thought impossible. 12 years ago, I stood in my family kitchen, trembling hands clutching a college acceptance letter, believing that moment would be the proudest of my life. Instead, it became the day I learned the most painful lesson: not everyone born into a family is loved equally. Before we begin, let me know where you are watching from today. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. Now let me take you back to that summer afternoon when everything I believed about my family shattered into pieces. Growing up, I always sensed something was different about how my parents treated me compared to my older brother, Kevin. He came into this world 4 years before me, and from the moment I could understand anything, I understood one thing clearly: Kevin was the son, and I was merely a shadow that happened to exist in the same house. My earliest memories are filled with small moments that, looking back now, painted a picture I was too young to comprehend. At dinner time, Kevin always sat right next to our father Donald at the head of the table. They would talk about baseball games, school projects, and weekend plans. I sat at the far end, closer to the kitchen door, often eating in silence, while my mother Patricia moved back and forth serving food. Sometimes when I tried to join their conversation, my father would give me a look that said my voice was an interruption rather than a contribution. Kevin had a bedroom filled with new toys, sports equipment, and posters of his favorite athletes. My room was smaller, tucked away at the back of the house near the laundry room. The furniture was second-hand, passed down from distant relatives who no longer needed it. My clothes were the same. While Kevin got new outfits for every school year, I wore hand-me-downs from cousins I barely knew. Items that never quite fit right and always smelled faintly of someone else's life. The birthday that stands out most in my memory is my 8th. I woke up that morning with excitement bubbling in my chest, convinced that this year would be different. I came downstairs to find my mother making breakfast as usual. My father was reading the newspaper. Kevin was watching cartoons. No one said happy birthday. No one mentioned it at all. I waited the entire day, thinking maybe there was a surprise coming, a cake hidden somewhere, presents tucked away in a closet. Nothing came. The day ended like any other ordinary day. But exactly 1 month later, Kevin turned 12, and suddenly our small house transformed into a celebration venue. My father rented a bounce house for the backyard. My mother baked a 3-layer chocolate cake. Relatives I had not seen in years showed up with wrapped gifts. There was music, laughter, and my father's proud voice telling everyone how Kevin was going to do great things someday. I sat on the back porch steps watching the party unfold, feeling like a guest in my own home. Through all of this, my mother remained a silent figure. She never challenged my father's favoritism, never stood up for me, never pulled me aside to say she loved me equally. Her silence spoke volumes. Whether she agreed with how things were or simply lacked the courage to disagree, the result was the same. I grew up feeling invisible to both of them. But there was one person who saw me, truly saw me, and that was my grandmother, Ruth. She was my mother's mother, a woman with silver hair, warm hands, and a laugh that could fill any room with light. Every summer, my parents would send me to stay with her for 2 weeks. They said it was to give them a break, to reduce the burden. I did not realize until much later that they were openly calling me a burden. But those 2 weeks were the happiest of my entire year. Grandma Ruth lived in a small cottage about 3 hours from our house, surrounded by a garden she tended with the kind of devotion most people reserve for their greatest passions. She taught me how to plant tomatoes, how to tell when peaches were ripe, how to make her famous apple pie from scratch. We would sit on her porch swing in the evenings, and she would tell me stories about her own childhood, about struggles she had overcome, about the importance of believing in yourself when no one else does. One evening when I was about 10 years old, I finally asked her the question that had been burning inside me for years. Why did my parents treat Kevin so differently? Why did it feel like they did not want me? Grandma Ruth was quiet for a long moment. Then she took my hands in hers, looked me straight in the eyes, and said something I have never forgotten. She said, "You are not a mistake, sweetheart." You are a gift that some people just do not know how to unwrap. Those words became my anchor through every storm that followed. Grandma Ruth passed away when I was 15. Cancer took her quickly within just a few months of her diagnosis. I was not even allowed to visit her in the hospital. My father said it would be too disruptive to Kevin's soccer schedule to make the 3-hour drive. She died on a Tuesday morning. I learned about it when I came home from school and found my mother crying in the kitchen. The funeral was small. I stood at her grave and promised her that I would prove them all wrong, that I would unwrap the gift inside myself even if no one else could see it. She left me 2 things in her will: a silver bracelet she had worn every day of her life and a small notebook filled with her handwritten recipes. I wore that bracelet from that day forward, a constant reminder of the one person who believed in me unconditionally. Kevin, meanwhile, continued to coast through life on a path paved entirely by our father's expectations and our mother's silent compliance. He was an average student at best, but our father spoke of him as though he were destined for greatness. Natural leader, he would tell neighbors and relatives. Just needs the right opportunities. Those opportunities came in the form of connections, favors, and doors that opened simply because our father knew the right people. Kevin learned early that he never had to work for anything. He never did household chores. He was never punished even when he deserved it. And whenever he got into trouble, he had a foolproof escape route: blame Marcella. I still remember the day he broke our grandmother's antique vase. It was the only thing my mother had kept from Grandma Ruth's cottage, a delicate piece of blue and white porcelain that had been in our family for generations. Kevin was throwing a football in the living room, something he had been told 100 times not to do. The ball knocked the vase off its shelf and it shattered on the hardwood floor. When my mother came running at the sound, Kevin pointed at me without hesitation. "She did it," he said. "She was trying to get my football and knocked it over." I opened my mouth to defend myself, but my father appeared in the doorway, and the look on his face silenced me. I was sent to my room without dinner. I heard Kevin laughing with our father an hour later, watching the game on television as though nothing had happened. So I learned to survive in that house by becoming invisible in a different way. I stopped trying to get their attention, stopped hoping for their approval. Instead, I poured every ounce of my energy into my schoolwork. If I could not earn their love, I would earn my way out. Every A on a test, every academic award, every teacher's praise became another brick in the bridge I was building toward freedom. The summer I turned 18, I graduated from high school as the valedictorian of my class. It was the proudest moment of my life up to that point. I had worked harder than anyone I knew, sacrificing social events, sleep, and any semblance of a normal teenage experience. And it had paid off. I held in my hands an acceptance letter from a prestigious university, along with a partial scholarship that covered about 60% of the tuition. I needed approximately $12,000 per year to cover the rest. It was a significant amount, but not impossible. I had seen my parents spend more than that on Kevin's car for his 16th birthday. I had watched them pour money into his sports equipment, his summer camps, his gadgets. Surely they would invest a fraction of that in my education. I spent an entire week preparing for the conversation. I wrote out a detailed plan showing exactly how the money would be used. I calculated how much I could earn through part-time jobs to offset the cost. I researched the average starting salaries of graduates from that program, demonstrating the return on investment. I rehearsed what I would say until I could recite it in my sleep. I chose Sunday afternoon right after lunch, when the house was usually calm and my father was typically in a good mood. I found my mother in the kitchen washing dishes from our meal. My father sat at the table reading the newspaper as he always did. Kevin was in the living room, sprawled on the couch watching some sports program. I took a deep breath, clutched my folder of documents, and began. I started by thanking them for raising me, for providing a roof over my head. I showed them my acceptance letter, explained the prestige of the program, detailed the scholarship I had already earned through my own merit. I walked them through my financial plan, how I intended to work 20 hours a week while maintaining my grades. I presented the salary projections, the career opportunities, the long-term benefits. I spoke for nearly 10 minutes without interruption. Throughout my entire presentation, my father did not look up from his newspaper. Not once. My mother continued washing dishes, her back to me, as though I were not even in the room. The only sound was the clinking of plates and the rustle of newspaper pages. Finally, I asked the question directly. "Dad," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands, "can you help me with the tuition?" Please silence filled the kitchen. It stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then slowly my father folded his newspaper and set it on the table. For the first time in the entire conversation, he looked at me. His eyes were cold, devoid of any warmth or affection. And then he spoke the words that would change everything. "You were a mistake," he said. His voice was flat matter-of-fact, as though he were stating an obvious truth. "We only wanted one child, Kevin. Everything we have ever saved is for Kevin. You want to go to college? Figure it out yourself." I stood frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. The words hit me like physical blows, each one landing harder than the last. A mistake. Unwanted. Alone. My mother stopped washing dishes for just a moment. Her hands paused in the soapy water. But she did not turn around. She did not say a word. After a second or two, she continued scrubbing as though my father had merely commented on the weather. And then Kevin walked through the kitchen to grab a drink from the refrigerator. He had heard everything. As he passed by me, he smirked and muttered just loud enough for me to hear. "Told you so." I do not know how long I stood there after that. Time seemed to lose all meaning. I remember looking down at my hands, at the folder I had prepared so carefully, at the silver bracelet on my wrist that had belonged to Grandma Ruth. Her words echoed in my mind. "You are not a mistake, sweetheart. You are a gift that some people just do not know how to unwrap." When I finally found my voice, I did not cry. I did not beg. I did not scream or argue or try to change their minds. I simply looked at my father and said 3 words. "I understand now." Then I turned and walked upstairs to my room. I pulled out the old suitcase from under my bed and began packing. I did not take much. Some clothes, a few books, my laptop from school, the silver bracelet, and Grandma Ruth's recipe notebook. I counted the money I had saved from years of odd jobs and birthday money from Grandma. $217. It was not much, but it would have to be enough. I left the house before sunrise the next morning. I did not leave a note. I did not say goodbye. There was nothing left to say to people who had made it abundantly clear I was nothing to them. I walked to the bus station and bought a one-way ticket to the city where my university was located. As the bus pulled away from my hometown, I made myself a promise. I would build a life so remarkable that they would never be able to deny my worth again. Not for revenge. For me. The first few years were brutal in ways I could never have anticipated. I arrived in the city with $200 a suitcase and absolutely no safety net. The partial scholarship covered my tuition, but everything else was my responsibility. Housing, food, books, transportation. I had to figure it all out on my own. I found a tiny room to rent in a house shared by 4 other students, each of us crammed into spaces that were barely larger than closets. My room had just enough space for a twin mattress on the floor and a small desk I found abandoned on a curb. The bathroom was shared among all 5 of us, and the kitchen was so small that only one person could cook at a time. But I did not have time to feel sorry for myself. I immediately began looking for work, any work that would fit around my class schedule. Within 2 weeks, I had secured 3 part-time positions. In the mornings before class, I cleaned offices in a downtown building, arriving at 5 a.m. and finishing by 8. After classes, I waitressed at a diner near campus, working the dinner shift until closing. On weekends, I tutored high school students in math and science. Between work and school, I averaged about 4 hours of sleep per night. I ate instant noodles and day-old bread from the bakery that sold their unsold items at a discount. I lost 15 pounds in my first semester. One night, about 3 months into my first year, my body finally gave out. I was in the middle of a dinner shift at the diner when the room started spinning. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm. Exhaustion and malnutrition, the doctor told me. I needed to rest, to eat properly, to take care of myself. I nodded, knowing I could not afford to do any of those things. Then the nurse handed me the bill. $512. I stared at the number and felt the walls closing in around me. That was when I met Derek. He was in my night class at the community college where I had enrolled for my general education credits. We had never spoken much before, just nodded at each other across the classroom. But somehow he heard about what happened. He showed up at my rented room 3 days after I got out of the hospital with a grocery bag full of actual food. Vegetables, pasta, chicken, even some fruit. He also handed me an envelope. Inside was $500 in cash. I cannot take this, I told him, trying to push it back into his hands. I barely know you. He shook his head. You can pay me back someday if you want, he said, or you can pay it forward to someone else who needs it. But right now, you need this. Let someone help you, Marcella. I cried for the first time since leaving home. Not because of the money, but because someone I hardly knew showed me more kindness in that single moment than my own family had shown me in 18 years. Derek became my closest friend. Over time, I learned his story. He had grown up in foster care, bounced between homes until he aged out of the system at 18. He understood what it meant to have no one to fall back on. We studied together, encouraged each other, and slowly built the kind of friendship that becomes family. In my second year, everything changed when I enrolled in a business course taught by Mr. Lawrence. He was a retired entrepreneur who had sold his company and now taught part-time more for the love of teaching than the paycheck. He assigned us to write an essay about a business idea we would create if we had unlimited resources. Most students wrote about apps or restaurants or clothing brands. I wrote about software that could help small businesses manage their operations more efficiently, something I had thought about while watching the diner struggle with scheduling and inventory. Mr. Lawrence asked me to stay after class the day he returned our essays. He sat down across from me and said he had been teaching for 15 years and had rarely seen someone with my combination of practical insight and ambitious vision. He asked about my background, and for reasons I still do not fully understand, I told him everything. My family, the rejection, the struggle to stay afloat. He listened without interruption, then said something that reminded me of Grandma Ruth. Your background is not your destiny, he said. Your choices are. Mr. Lawrence became my mentor. He connected me with scholarship programs I had never heard of, internship opportunities at real companies and people in his network who could open doors. With his help, I transferred to a 4-year university with a full scholarship. I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in business administration and computer science. At my graduation ceremony, Mr. Lawrence sat in the audience cheering louder than anyone. Derek sat beside him. They were my family now. After graduation, I took a job at a small tech startup that was struggling to find its footing. The salary was modest, but the opportunity was enormous. Within 2 years, I had risen from entry-level analyst to director of operations. I worked 18-hour days, not because I had to, but because I loved building something meaningful. At 28 years old, Derek and I had saved enough and learned enough to start our own company. We developed the software I had written about in Mr. Lawrence's class all those years ago refined and expanded into a comprehensive platform for small and medium businesses. The first year was terrifying. We maxed out credit cards worked out of Derek's apartment and survived on coffee and determination. But the product was good, more than good. It filled a real need in the market. By year 3, we had secured venture capital funding. By year 5, we had over 100 employees. By year 10, the company had grown to over 300 employees with offices in 4 cities. I was named CEO. Derek served as Chief Operating Officer, and our little startup had become a major player in the industry. I bought a penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. I drove a car I had chosen myself, wore clothes that fit perfectly, and ate at restaurants where the meals cost more than I used to earn in a week. But the two most valuable things I owned were still the silver bracelet on my wrist and the worn recipe notebook in my bedside drawer. Throughout all of this, I never contacted my family. I never searched for news about them, never asked anyone from my hometown how they were doing. I built my life as though they did not exist, because to me they had made it clear that I did not exist to them. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning, 12 years and 3 months after I had walked out of my parents' house. My assistant Sophie knocked on my office door with an unusual expression on her face. "There is someone online too," she said. "He says his name is Kevin, claims to be your brother." The name hit me like a bucket of ice water. I had not heard it spoken aloud in over a decade. For a moment, I considered telling Sophie to say I was unavailable, but something made me reach for the phone. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the closure I had never gotten. Maybe I just wanted to hear what excuse he could possibly have for calling after all this time. Marcella Kevin's voice came through the line artificially warm. "It is so good to hear your voice. How have you been?" I waited in silence, letting the question hang in the air. "Listen," he continued, his tone shifting slightly. "I know we have not talked in a while. I have been meaning to reach out. Things have been crazy, you know how it is." More silence from my end. "So the thing is," Kevin finally got to the point. "I am kind of in a situation right now. The company I was working at, they did some restructuring. Budget cuts, you know. And I got caught up in it. Lost my position last month." He paused, waiting for sympathy that did not come. "Anyway, I heard through the grapevine that you have been doing really well for yourself. Some kind of tech company or something. That is amazing, really. I always knew you were smart. So I was thinking maybe there is something at your company that would be a good fit for me." Management level, obviously. I have got over 10 years of experience now. I finally spoke. "You got fired." "What?" "No, it was not like that. It was restructuring." "Kevin," I said calmly, "I know exactly what happened. I know that Dad used his connections to get you that job right out of college. I know you never earned a single promotion in 10 years. And I know that the company finally cleaned house and let go of all the dead weight." The line went quiet. "I did not fire you with a phone call," I continued. "But I am also not going to give you a job. I will think about whether there is anything else to discuss. Goodbye, Kevin." I hung up before he could respond. 2 weeks later, Sophie informed me that 2 visitors were waiting in the lobby. An older couple, she said. "They did not have an appointment, but they insisted on seeing you. They said they are your parents." I took a deep breath and told her to send them up. Whatever was coming, I was ready for it. I had spent 12 years preparing for this moment without even knowing it. My father looked older than I remembered. His hair had gone completely gray, and he walked with a slight stoop that had not been there before. My mother seemed smaller, somehow, more fragile. Her eyes darting around my office as though she could not quite believe what she was seeing. "Marcella." My father began spreading his arms wide. "Look at this place. Look at what you have accomplished. We are so proud of you. We always knew you would do great things." I remained seated behind my desk, watching them with an expression I had practiced in countless business negotiations. Neutral. Unreadable. "We have been thinking about you so much over the years," my mother added, her voice trembling. "We wanted to reach out, but we did not know how." "Really?" I said. "You did not know how. Phones have worked the same way for decades." "So has mail. So has email." My father cleared his throat, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Well, you know how things are. Time gets away from you. But we are here now. Family is family, right?" He glanced around the office again, and I could see the calculation in his eyes. The artwork on the walls, the view from the windows, the obvious signs of success surrounding me. "The thing is," he continued, "Kevin is going through a rough patch. That job he had, it did not work out. He needs a fresh start. We were hoping you might have something for him here. Something in management. He has experience, he just needs the right opportunity." "I see," I said. "And what else?" My mother looked at the floor. "Your father and we are not getting any younger. Medical bills have been piling up. His back, my knees. Insurance does not cover everything. We thought maybe since you are doing so well, you might be able to help. We are family after all. We raised you." I stood up slowly and walked to the window, looking out at the city that had become my home. The city I had built my life in brick by brick without any help from the two people standing in my office. "Do you remember," I asked, still facing the window, "what you said to me when I asked for help with college?" Silence filled the room. I turned to face them. "Do you remember standing in the kitchen and telling me I was a mistake? That you only wanted one child and it was not me? That everything you had was for Kevin and I could figure out my own future?" My father's face had gone pale. My mother started to cry softly. "We were different," then she whispered. "We made mistakes." Yes, I agreed. You did. And one of those mistakes was telling me I was one. I walked back to my desk, standing behind it like a shield. I built everything I have from nothing. Without you. Despite you. I worked 3 jobs while going to school. I collapsed from exhaustion and could not afford the hospital bill. I ate instant noodles for years while you were spending money on Kevin's sports cars and vacations. I did not hear from either of you when I graduated from college, when I started my company, when I was named CEO. Not once. And now you show up because Kevin needs a job and you need money. Marcella, my father started. "I am not finished," I said, and my voice carried an authority that silenced him instantly. "I will not give Kevin a job. He needs to learn how to build something for himself. He is over 30 years old. It is time he figured out how the world works without someone handing him everything." I paused, looking at my mother. "As for the medical bills, I will have my lawyer set up an account to cover a portion of Mom's expenses. Not because you deserve it, but because, unlike you, I know what it means to struggle, and I would not wish that on anyone. But there will be no contact. No phone calls, no visits, no family reunions. The money will be handled through legal channels, and that will be the extent of our relationship." I looked at my father directly. "You will never be part of my life. That door closed 12 years ago when you told me I was a mistake. You do not get to walk through it now just because you finally realized I might be useful to you." My father opened his mouth to argue, but I pressed a button on my phone. Sophie appeared in the doorway. "Please escort my visitors out," I said. "We are done here." That evening I went home to my apartment. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window watching the lights of the city flicker on as darkness fell. On my wrist, Grandma Ruth's silver bracelet caught the last rays of sunlight. I touched it gently, feeling the smooth metal that had been warmed by her skin for so many years, before it was warmed by mine. I had expected to feel triumphant after that confrontation. Victorious. But the feeling that washed over me was different. It was not satisfaction or revenge, it was release. The weight I had been carrying for 12 years, the weight of their rejection, their words, their dismissal of my entire existence, finally lifted from my shoulders. I called Derek and told him everything. He listened without interrupting, just as he had been doing since the day he showed up at my door with groceries and $500. "You know what I think he said when I finished? I think you did not just close a chapter today. You finished an entire book and started a new one." He was right. For so long, part of me had been waiting for this moment, whether I admitted it to myself or not. Waiting for them to see what I had become, to acknowledge their mistake, to apologize. But standing in that office, looking at my father's calculating eyes and my mother's too late tears, I realized I did not need any of that. I had already proven everything I needed to prove. Not to them, but to myself. Grandma Ruth had been right all along. I was a gift, and I had finally unwrapped it, not because someone else helped me, but because I had the courage to do it myself. The life I built was mine. The success I achieved was mine. The family I chose. Derek, Mr. Lawrence, Sophie, and the hundreds of people who worked alongside me. they were mine too. Forgiveness. I have learned does not mean forgetting. It does not mean allowing people back into your life so they can hurt you again. Forgiveness means releasing yourself from the prison of bitterness and resentment. It means choosing peace over anger, even when anger would be justified. I forgave my parents that night not because they deserved it, but because I deserved freedom from the weight of hating them. There is a lesson in my story that I hope you carry with you. Family is not always determined by blood. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally are the ones who wound you most deeply. And sometimes the family that truly matters is the one you build yourself with people who see your worth, even when you cannot see it yourself. I still wear Grandma Ruth's bracelet every single day. And sometimes when the sun hits it just right, I whisper, "Thank you" to her, wherever she is. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for teaching me that my worth was never determined by my parents' ability to see it. Sometimes the best response to those who doubted you is not revenge. It is simply becoming the person they said you could never be, and then choosing peace over bitterness. I look out at the city that became my home, and I smile. Not because I proved them wrong, but because I proved myself right. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to build your own path when the people who should have supported you turned away? How did you find your strength? Leave a comment below and share your story. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need a reminder that their circumstances do not define their destiny. Subscribe to this channel so you do not miss more stories of resilience, healing, and triumph. Thank you for being here with me today. I wish you the courage to see your own worth, even when others cannot, and the strength to build the life you deserve. Remember, you are not a mistake. You are a gift waiting to be unwrapped.